What if scientists detected a sound in the Pacific Ocean so powerful that it was picked up by sensors thousands of miles away? And what if at first they couldn't explain what made it? In 1997, something like this actually happened. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a network of underwater microphones was listening to the sounds of the sea. Most of the time, they detected things scientists already understood: earthquakes, volcanoes, ships, whales, normal sounds from a very noisy planet. But then, one signal appeared that was different, much different. It was incredibly powerful, and it traveled through the ocean for an enormous distance. Scientists eventually gave it a simple name: the Bloop. But the name wasn't the frightening part. The frightening part was the question behind it. What made it? At first, there were plenty of possibilities. Maybe it was an underwater earthquake, maybe a volcanic event, maybe something connected to massive ice formations. But there was another possibility, one that captured the imagination of millions of people. What if the sound came from an animal? Think about that for a moment. The ocean is enormous. Most of it is hidden beneath the surface, and the deeper you go, the harder it becomes for humans to explore. There are animals down there that look almost impossible. Some create their own light. Some have enormous mouths. Some have bodies so strange that they look more like creatures from science fiction than animals from Earth. And then there's the giant squid. For centuries, sailors told stories about enormous squid attacking ships. Many people thought those stories were exaggerated. Then, scientists finally confirmed that giant squid were real. So when the Bloop appeared, people started asking a dangerous question. Could there be something even bigger hiding in the deep? The internet didn't waste any time. Theories began spreading. Some people imagined a prehistoric creature. Others imagined an enormous, unknown animal living thousands of feet below the surface. And the theory sounded terrifying for one simple reason. If an animal had created that sound, how big would that animal have to be? Could it be larger than a blue whale? Could it be something completely unknown? For a while, nobody had a satisfying answer, and the Bloop made it famous. But there's something important you need to understand. Scientists weren't saying they had discovered a sea monster. They hadn't. There was no creature, no photograph, no DNA. There was only a mysterious sound and a huge, unanswered question. So researchers did what scientists do. They went back to the evidence. They studied the recording. They examined its frequency. They compared it with other sounds from the ocean. And slowly, a clue began to appear. A clue that pointed away from a living creature and toward something much larger. Something capable of making the entire ocean sound like a giant speaker. But what could do that? And why was the sound so powerful? The answer was hiding in the ice. And once scientists realized what they were hearing, the Bloop mystery changed completely.
So, if the Bloop wasn't a giant sea creature, what was it? To understand that, we have to understand something strange about the ocean. Water is an incredibly good environment for sound. Under the right conditions, sound can travel enormous distances underwater. That means a sound created in one part of the ocean can sometimes be detected incredibly far away. And this is exactly why the Bloop became so interesting. The signal wasn't just loud, it had traveled. a very long way. But when scientists began comparing the signal with known underwater sounds, they noticed something. The bloop had characteristics that were consistent with sounds produced by massive ice events. In other words, the ocean may not have been hiding a monster, it may have been hiding a piece of nature powerful enough to sound like one. Imagine an enormous mass of ice, larger than anything you've ever seen. Now imagine part of it breaking apart, cracking, grinding, shifting. The amount of energy involved can be enormous, and when that energy enters the ocean, it can produce sound, sometimes very powerful sound. Suddenly, the monster theory started looking much weaker. But there was still a problem. If scientists eventually had a likely explanation, why did the bloop become such a massive mystery in the first place? Because at the beginning, they didn't know what they were hearing. And that's an important difference. Science doesn't always begin with an answer. Sometimes it begins with a strange observation, something that doesn't fit, something that makes researchers say, "Wait, what was that?" That's exactly what happened here. The bloop wasn't proof of a hidden sea creature, it was proof of something else. The ocean can take an event that seems almost impossible to imagine and carry its sound across enormous distances. And that raises another question. If something as ordinary as moving ice can produce this powerful sound, what else is happening beneath the surface that we haven't heard yet? Because the deep ocean is still one of the least understood environments on our planet. We've sent probes into space, we've explored distant planets, we've landed robots on Mars. But underneath Earth's oceans, there are still places humans have barely visited. There are mountains, canyons, volcanoes, deep trenches, entire ecosystems, and animals that scientists haven't even discovered yet. That doesn't mean there are monsters down there, but it does mean something much more interesting. We don't know everything. And sometimes, that's where the best mysteries begin. But the bloop still leaves us with one final question. If scientists eventually had a likely explanation, why are people still talking about this sound almost 30 years later? Because the real mystery isn't just what created the bloop, it's what the bloop revealed about our own planet. And that discovery is much stranger than the monster story.
So, was the bloop a sea monster? No. At least there's no scientific evidence that it was. The evidence points towards a natural source, most likely a massive ice-related event. And that should have been the end of the story. Mystery solved, case closed. But it wasn't. Because the bloop left behind a much bigger question. How much of our own ocean do we actually understand? Think about that. The sound that created one of the Internet's most famous ocean mysteries came from our own planet. Not another galaxy, not an alien civilization, not some prehistoric monster. Earth. And yet, for years, we didn't know what we were hearing. That's what makes the story fascinating. The ocean can hide things in plain sight. You can stand on a beach, look across the water, and see nothing unusual. But beneath that surface is an environment completely different from the world we know. At a certain depth, sunlight disappears, pressure increases dramatically, temperatures fall, and life has to adapt in ways that seem almost impossible. Some animals produce light, some survive without sunlight, some have developed bodies that look completely alien. And every year, scientists continue discovering species and behaviors they didn't know existed. So maybe the most interesting question isn't, is there a monster at the bottom of the ocean? Maybe the better question is, what haven't we discovered yet? Because the bloop taught us something important. A strange sound doesn't automatically mean a monster. It means there's something we don't understand. And the only way to find the truth is to investigate. That's exactly what happened with the bloop. A mysterious signal appeared. People created theories. Scientists tested those theories. And eventually a natural explanation emerged. But the ocean didn't suddenly become less mysterious. If anything, it became more interesting. Because now we know that nature itself can create sounds powerful enough to fool our imagination. And somewhere beneath the surface there are still countless unexplored places. Maybe we'll find new species. Maybe we'll discover ancient landscapes. Maybe we'll record another sound that leaves scientists scratching their heads. And maybe the next mystery will have an answer we've never even imagined. So the next time you hear someone say there's nothing left to discover on Earth, remember the bloop. In 1997, a sound came from the ocean. Nobody knew what it was. People imagined monsters. Scientists searched for evidence. And eventually the mystery pointed back to nature. But the ocean still has one advantage. It doesn't have to hide a monster to remain mysterious. It only has to keep something from us long enough for us to wonder. And beneath those waves there is still an enormous world waiting to be discovered.